So behind us is the full group of missionaries from St. John the Baptist in Marshfield. We did have representation for Christ the King in Spencer, and those are the two parishes Father Martin was part of. The primary relationship is with St. John the Baptist, and so we'll talk about the history of it and even our outfits and try to answer all your questions. The one thing I would invite is, as you see something, feel free to ask questions. This can be interactive. Before we get started in earnest, did you grab the pointer? You did. We're going to start with a prayer that was given to us by the Mother Superior of the Sisters of Our Lady Queen of Africa. And one of the unique things about this relationship is that it is with the Mother Superior. So it's connected to an order. We'll tell you a little bit more about them. But it was a prayer that we asked all of those missionaries that were part of our group to pray. And interestingly, our two daughters joined us in the front row. That's Elizabeth, 13, and Catherine,
she's right behind me,
16. They're both set to have birthdays within the next week. So it was a unique family experience for us. So I invite you to pray with us. God of all courage, help us to walk alongside our sisters and brothers in Tanzania as they struggle to feed their families and live their faith. We know you hear the cry of the poor and call on us to live out your desire for charity. May we, through prayer and action, show your love for the people in need around the world as we share our bread with the hungry. In Jesus' name, who shared bread with the hungry and gave hope to those in despair. Amen. I'm going to back up momentarily. And you may have noticed that I changed layers. And the one thing that you're not able to see on that picture is what's on the back. And sorry, Darla, but you're on the wrong side of me. And that is the coat of arms of the country of Tanzania. So practically, if you haven't been on a mission trip, the one thing that can be scary and intimidating for people is just the travel. And so from my previous experience of leading groups on World Youth Day pilgrimages, I understood the importance of having a unified visual appearance so you simply knew who the people were in your group. The added benefit of this particular shirt was that it led to questions, which was great because before our people even got to Africa, they had typically run into one or two people in the airport that were asking them, "So tell me, what is this about?" And so it creates dialogue that otherwise wouldn't have happened. But very practically, I know where my group is. So if you're not familiar with Tanzania, you can see it's eastern side, just below the equator. And we landed in Dar es Salaam, took a quick flight of like an hour and a half over to Sumbawanga.
No, we went to Mbeya. Sumbawanga is where we ended
up. Oh, you're
up.
right, thank you. We took an hour and a half flight to Mbeya, but then we took a 5-hour bus ride from Mbeya up to Sumbawanga. And crazy thing is, the roads took us to Zambia. So we were on a number of occasions right on the border with Zambia en route to Sumbawanga. And later we'll talk a little bit about going up to this area on a safari, and then down in this area there was a waterfall. So just to help orient you. I also thought it was noteworthy that if you look at the physical shape of Tanzania, it is somewhat similar to Wisconsin in that you have bodies of water on the same sides. And so we actually had seen an outline of Tanzania and somebody said, "Oh, there's Wisconsin." No, that's Tanzania. It was just kind of a rough, cryptic outline. Any successful mission trip begins way before you leave home. And our, I think, thoughts of an African mission trip began. Do you want to talk about?
Well, in 2002, when we had the opportunity to go on a World Youth Day to Toronto with Father Woody and Father Kanapa And Father Woody had arranged for Sister Salome and the DRE at her church, Leonard, came with us, and we met Sister Salome, and I fell in love with Sister Salome and the African culture that she brought with her, and it then became my dream to go to Africa. Interestingly, I was pregnant with Catherine on that trip, and she was able to go to Tanzania with us. So it started back in 2002, but our connection with Our Lady Queen of Africa sisters has a more recent thing, and you tell it much better than I do, so I'm going to let you tell that part.
So the connection, I would say, is none other than divine. So Father Sam Martin came to Marshfield in 2011, and shortly after that, this family here moved to Marshfield, and there were two concurrent yet bound to intercept paths. Father Martin felt, as pastor, that there was the timing was right and the parish was ready for an international connection. Didn't have anything in mind. This family, the Steiners, had encountered Sister Sabina, a sister from Tanzania, from the order that we have connected with, while they were still living in Portland. So they moved to Marshfield, and in the first encounter, they just offered, just for your information, we have this relationship. He said, amen. And so that was the beginning of what turned into, so this was in 2014. I can't remember the precise, but just to give you an idea of the fact that this was a divine interaction. Father Martin introduces to the parish this idea. Immediately there was embrace, to the point that within a year and a half, and it didn't all come from the parish, but within a year and a half, over $100,000 was raised to build this convent and a retreat house. So it wasn't just within our parish, within our city, but there was an individual who read about the Catholic life and approached Father Martin, what do you need? And they wrote a check for $20,000. So that's where I say that it wasn't anything any of us had done. It was, the hand of God.
Along with that, somehow the Hatch Foundation, which is a philanthropic group, found out about it and has taken on the Our Lady Queen of Africa as one of their benefactors in this whole thing. So it was just a hand of God. The Divine Mercy Convent was built in Mwanza, which was in the very far north of where we stayed. We did not go visit there. It was too far for us to travel. But when I Googled how to go from Dar es Salaam to Mbeya to Sumbawanga to Mwanza, from Sumbawanga to Mwanza, it said, there is no way you can get there from here.
So with this relationship already in place, so the convent was built, I know that's 2014, the convent was almost completed. That was the significance. In 2017, a group went over for the first time. In 2019, we went over. So what you see here is a group of 21 individuals, each carrying 2 check bags that can max out at 50 pounds. So we transported over a ton of supplies along with us that consisted of items for the clinic and hospital, for the school, for the orphanage, and for the administration. So what we ended up doing is needing to divide out, because some things are going to weigh more than others, and also you're trying to protect things like microscopes. So the bags weren't necessarily divided by where they were going. So one of the first things we did when we arrived was to take everything out and then to reorganize so that we could deliver it to the places where it was intended. We had no idea how prepared they were to receive us. So when we, after making all those divisions, thinking we're just going to take the goods to the school and drop them off, we're rather surprised, in a wonderful way, although there we are. So we were impressed, you know, they knew some English, that was, but really just to have these students all lined up, and we knew we were late, we knew they had been waiting, and the joy, the cheer, the positive, that was just the appetizer. Because the next thing we experienced was going to the center of the courtyard and giving out the gifts that we had brought, and some of which, you know, were the retired jerseys from Columbus Sports that, you know, are now being worn by kids running around the playground. But the profound thing was what they did next. And that was to sing a number of songs. Yeah.
This is their national anthem, I'm pretty sure.
It was profound to have the air just filled and in harmony, and wow. So we were able, a few days later, to come back to the school, and the headmaster had made arrangements for us to divide and teach their students of the things that come from America that we brought.
The government of Tanzania is really interested in having their people learn English and understand English well. So the principal saw our coming as an opportunity for us to interact with his girls and to help them learn English in particular. But so we came and we brought a bunch of medical supplies. Marshfield Clinic helped donate, allowed us to bring a bunch of medical supplies. This is a clinic that's on the site of the school, and the first picture here is when we came, the staff of the clinic was being goofy, but the middle picture, the day that we were there with the students, they were divided up by interest. So the girls that were interested in medicine came with, we had 2 nurses and a doctor on our team, and here they were just so fascinated and eager to learn, and they're checking Rose's tonsils now, but they did blood pressure and everything. They were just like, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to be a doctor? What do I have to do? What do I have to do? Was a constant question that they were getting received. I don't know if, do you have the picture of the pharmacy that later on? Okay.
Yeah,
so when we came to tour this, it was really bleak and interesting, but we'll talk a little bit more about this. So again, some more medical, they were doing checks with others. We also brought along, they do not have a music program, even though those children sang so beautifully, they don't have a music class or a music program. So we brought along recorders for them to use in there to help them expand. And they do have a traditional instrument that's similar to a recorder, but the girls that were in our music group, none of them had ever played that before. And we worked, I was working with this group, and Courtney was in the gold, is a music student at UWSP, and Roman is a musician. He is a play-by-ear musician. The 2 of them together did an incredible job of teaching these young girls to play the recorder. After it taking a whole morning for us to try and come up with some common language, our original thought was to teach, to learn their version of Mary Had a Little Lamb, you know, a nursery rhyme song that everybody knows the same. So we're going to teach, and then Roman would be able to hear it and hear the notes, and then Courtney would be able to teach them the notes. We couldn't find that common song. What is a song that you all know? Oh, come. I even talked to one of the teachers. Maybe I'm not communicating well. I talked to the teacher that had the best English. She's like, no, they don't have the same song. Later, somebody had said, after we got home, somebody said, well, it's a tribal country. Maybe they don't have a common song. Oh, that made so much sense. We spent a morning trying to figure out. Their commonality was popular songs, popular. So once we broke them into small groups, and then each small group came up with a song. But each song was a popular song. There wasn't one, I imagine if we would have done that, you would have had a bunch of really simple Barney song, the Mary Had a Little Lamb, that would have been the common song. But here it was all popular. But Courtney and Raymond got them playing these recorders beautifully. I had just come away from hearing fourth graders play recorders for a whole semester, and it's still hurting my ears. But they were beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It was very exciting.
I think one thing that is noteworthy, pun intended, is that with music in Tanzania, and this is probably true in other places, they don't have sheet music. They learn by ear. Mm-hmm. And so Courtney was trying to find different sheet music, and even when we were at Mass, watching the person at the organ, we realized they don't even for organ use sheet music. It's all by ear. Do you want to talk about?
Okay, so we also brought with us, again from the clinic, computers, laptop computers, and a group of people were then teaching them computers. Now in Tanzania, they have a very developed cell phone system. The government again came in, put cell phone towers all over the place. And so our sisters had cell phones with them, and we were in the middle of a safari, in the middle of literally nowhere, and she was talking on the phone. We can't do that in all parts of Marshfield, so. But computers, they didn't have a lot of experience with computers. So they started at bare bones, like this is the power, and they were teaching them some word processing things, is how they were working with the computers with them. So
we brought along 10 that were all donated, refurbed, old medical units, so they had long battery life, which is very important when you have unstable electricity. So in addition to the fact that many of them have never used a keyboard, and this was a great resource to provide for them as they are trying to educate these young ladies, practically it was very beneficial to have that. And our IT person at Columbus then went through and removed all the stuff, because it was your package deal, and then installed Open Office, so they were basically set and ready to go. Mm-hmm.
Then we had a donation we brought frisbees, because frisbees are great. They have balls, they play soccer, but our young people worked with the kids and taught them Ultimate and some other games that they brought along. I don't know, down here they're playing some type of clapping game, Crocodile Morris or something like that.
Were frisbees?
No, they were not.
That was pretty exciting then.
Yes. It was really, they had a great time teaching them how to throw them even.
And here's just a fun.
The girls taught them
They taught them. One of the beautiful things of our group was the presence of teenagers. Mm-hmm. It added an element, and I had people caution me that they didn't think that was going to be a good environment, that they didn't think it would be proper to take along young people. And I prayed about it. I spoke with Father Woody. Father Martin was in on it, and we thought, we really don't have anything we have experienced firsthand that would lead us to and the experience like that, because our daughter Elizabeth still is in like a pen pal relationship with some students. Mm-hmm. So what a beautiful experience.
So Tanzania is very different, from what I understand from Father Kuhn and Father Woody, than Uganda. we weren't greeted. We didn't see a lot of armed guards in our travel, and the electricity we never had any electrical outages. The government has done a good job of trying to get electricity to all of the villages, but it's not very strong electricity. Later on, we'll show we were at a convent where they had a sink and a refrigerator and everything, but they had to go out and get the water from the well because the electricity wasn't strong enough to run the pump that would bring the water into the house.
The other noteworthy difference is that where we spent most of the time was in a city of about 80,000. So as opposed to where you're at in Uganda, we went by many villages in Tanzania where you could just see one electrical line coming in and only a few homes seemingly having electricity. Mm-hmm. So people had asked me, contrasting my experience at Kasogar in Peru versus Tanzania, and I would say much more third world, if I could use that as a descriptor. And that fact that I hadn't seen in Peru some of the things I saw in Tanzania, and that could just be because of my limited exposure. But on our way to the safari, driving by, seeing people making bricks at the river, and piles of them, oxen pulling a plow, a lot of these things that you may only have seen in videos or National Geographic, that was what we experienced. And yet, the other thing that all of us talked about was the joy in the eyes of the African people. Mm-hmm. And so one of the worst crimes that we felt we could be guilty of is Americanizing them. So that wasn't at all what we wanted to do.
We also, one of the people that traveled with us was an art teacher, and so she brought a bunch of art supplies, the origami and some other things, crayons, markers, colored pencils. They hadn't colored before, like used crayons to color a picture. That was new for them. So we did, one of the sessions that we had was art. And then we also brought along string to make rosaries. So Father Joe Hirsch, Monsignor Hirsch, is represented here now in Africa with his rosaries. And the kids loved it. This bottom picture here, this little girl, I believe is the one that, she finished it. We went someplace else for lunch and came back, and she finished her rosary over lunchtime and was very fascinated. One of the ideas when the principal did this was for the group of students who were interested in that to do it, but then they would then at a different time have an opportunity to teach the other students about the computers, about the rosary making or the music. So,
two things to point out. Do you see this Speak English?
Oh yeah.
It was written in many, many places around the campus. So we were at the campus of a all-girls boarding school. Another thing to point out is the short haircuts. They're all girls, but it's simply to control lice and other things from long hair. So it's just for practical purposes.
Yeah, even the girls that we saw that were going to the public school, walking back and forth, none of the girls had long hair. The women did, but the girls did not.
So we were at the school 2 different times. We came back Sunday, and it was a celebration day. So I want to give you just a glimpse of them dancing. Yeah, and on several times they were all in that tight a space doing obviously a dance that they all knew and we were sad. Even though like that one you may have looked at and said, well, isn't that like electric slide, whatever it is, and some of our group got out there and we were just all,
That first day where they sang that beautiful song to us, They then said, now you sing a song for us. And we all looked at each other like, and what are we going to sing? It was awful.
So another aspect of our time with them was Mass and prayers, kind of the spiritual component of our pilgrimage. And one of the pieces, if you've ever been on a pilgrimage, you've got to be rooted in prayer. And so it was a treat as the kind of the leader to not have to plan that out. Once we got there, the sisters took care of it. And the first day that we joined them, up here, this is us having Mass in Turkey, in the Istanbul airport, just because of travel time. So from the time we left Marshfield to the time we arrived in Sumbawanga was 48 hours. So we had to have, Mass in transit, and that was one of the opportunities. Down here, we were there on Corpus Christi Sunday and able to participate in a Corpus Christi procession, which they explained to us in advance was going to be shortened. 4 hours.
4 hours.
We started. I don't know how people get notice. We get frustrated if we don't get an email, more than whatever. So we gathered with Mother Superior for Mass that we thought was going to be at 8. No, we thought it was going to be at 10. So we gather for breakfast, and then she says, no, they're not going to have the 10 o'clock Mass because of the procession. It's only at 8. So we run over there to find out that it starts at 8:30.
We gathered for breakfast, but we did not eat breakfast.
And it went until 11.
The Mass did.
Then we had the Eucharistic procession. We gringos were a hurting bunch by the time we could finally, have something to eat.
We were very thankful it was short because
in a way to honor the American priest, you may not be able to tell that's Father Martin, he got the bulk of the time. I think they were just, saying, let the American do it. But the bishop was there. It was over 1,000 people, part of the procession. They blocked off streets, and this is, again, in a metropolis, 80,000. It was profound. I'd been in processions for World Youth Days, with millions, and there was something, it was obviously the presence of Christ, but the reverence of the people, even those who weren't actively participating, it was amazing.
And this was a particularly Catholic area, but every morning we were woken up by a call to prayer, the Muslim call to prayer. So there was a Muslim contingent in this community.
I'm curious, what was it like having such a public Mass in Istanbul?
It wasn't bad.
No problem?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Our terminal was kind of towards the end, and we intentionally just kind of gathered and, formed a three-quarter circle, and so that just kind of allows you to block things out.
Yeah, people
and not
looked,
think about where you are.
Yeah. People looked, but there wasn't, I didn't notice, because I was kind of facing out, didn't notice anybody looking, like, meanly. They're just curious more.
So I've got a video clip I want to share of the sisters singing, and not what you would find at daily Mass, probably around here, Christy.
Sister Scholastica.
Oh, the Mother Superior, Sister Scholastica, is right here. So that was at the close of Mass, and they brought us up after communion in the front. They sang a song. I'm not somebody that often has tears in my eyes, but I was in tears, and I actually turned to Allison, the doctor in our group, and I said, you know what? I never thought I'd bypass purgatory, but it feels like I'm in heaven. It was that type of surreal experience of profound sanctity that there was something about, the way they sang, and just to be enveloped in that was something I hadn't experienced before.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh,
So Sister Scholastica was with us our whole time. She was our host, and we had her friend Sister Benny was Sister Benedict was with us
yeah.
as
Do you
well.
notice, if you're familiar, Benedict, Scholastica, they're twins, by the way, saints, and those
Well,
were our,
Sister
our
Scholastica and
leaders.
Sister Benedict were not twins. But,
No, but
So on the day that we were going to, they were showing their country off. They showed us all of the things that they were doing in their apostolate, including the girls' school is their main thing. But they also wanted to show their country off to us. So they took us on a safari. And on our way to the safari, Sister, again, things did not go quite as planned. And she calls where they have the formation house and gave them 30 minutes notice to know that 25 people were coming for breakfast. And and then they also, each of the groups danced and sang for us. So the whistle and the shoulder thing was really important to them. Some of the things, the cultural things, we just didn't get to know, but it was really important to them, and that came out a couple of different times. The whistle not as often as the shoulder dance, but it was fun. And at this site, one of the things that was really cool about the sisters is that they are really self-sufficient. At this site and at the orphanage and at their mother house, they grow as much as their own stuff as they can. So this was where the formation house was. It was beautiful up in the mountains, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful location. But they had like a small farm that they were growing. They had chickens and they were growing. I think we ate all of their chickens while we were there, but they were growing their own food. And
to that end, we had discussion, Father Woody, Marga, and us, about what are we going to serve. And first of all, it'd be difficult with spicing and all that, but they served us the best of the best. And so it really wouldn't be representative of what they eat day to day. And so when Christy says that we probably ate all their chickens, I think, yeah, that may have been.
it was.
So one more, and while we were there, the Sisters of Our Lady Queen of Africa houses were, as they do, spend time on retreat, but they were doing it at the mother house, which is where we were spending our time. So here is a group wrapping up their time and invited us into it. So they grabbed Courtney and Beth and invited them to try to play along, with the instruments. And you can see these tables, and there was one along here and along there, to honor us as, guests of honor, and then to perform. And I tell you, that night it went to like 11 o'clock. We were all fighting, to be respectful and not fall asleep. But even Sister Scholastica was having a hard time.
They're two different building sites here. They are in the process because their mother house they're outgrowing their mother house. So the foundation on the left here is where they are building a new retreat center where those 8-day retreats would happen, and more of the sisters would be able to gather together. They still don't have a big enough space for all of them, but they could do it in smaller groups or fewer groups. The foundations it's really important to pour a foundation, because in Tanzania that's your way of saying this is our land and the government can't take it from you. If you just own it, the government can decide, well, no, actually we're going to use that for something else. But once a foundation is there, it's more stably yours. The picture on the right is that convent that I was telling you about. It's a new convent. It has a refrigerator. It has flush toilets. But you had to take a bucket of water to flush the toilet because there wasn't enough energy in the electricity that came into the house to run the water pump. They also run an orphanage. This is a small orphanage, about 30 to 40 children. Most of the children come from women who give birth at their clinic and then die in childbirth. Then the children come here. Most of the children have families, and they go back to their family when they get to be about 5 to 7.
The one thing that we noted and inquired and were surprised with what we learned is there were 3 albino children. And we found out that their parents are alive. They're protecting them. There are still active practicing witch doctors that will take them and use their body parts in their different practices. Yeah, so they're sheltering. So we've tried to be very careful in the pictures that we post, especially on social media, that it not include them. But it's something that we can share because, like, wow, there's kind of a profound cultural shock.
And the sisters, again, this has like a mini farm. They had some pigs and some cows, and they actually even had a methane digester. So they were creating their own energy. It was really cool. We had a juice, which everybody thought was Kool-Aid. The kids all thought was Kool-Aid, and yes, and it was actually a hibiscus type drink, like a passion flower. And they showed us then that they were drying, as we got a tour, they were drying the leaves, and they crushed the leaves and made it all out of that. Very resourceful people.
The other thing that they noticed, I'll put this behind my back, but there's a connection. The other thing that people noticed in that drink was, what is that taste? It tastes burned. What is it? It's because they boiled the water. The coffee that we had, and you can pass this around, was dehydrated. So we just, poured hot water and scooped this in, and I brought this back, and I was tasting it a couple different times. There's something I remember, but what is it? I would bet that the grounds were dehydrated over an open flame because I can still taste, that, which is a great memory. So that's one thing we brought back, and then
We got about 5 minutes.
what?
About 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. You want to talk about?
Oh, and this just tea. In the morning, they graced us with coffee and tea, coffee and tea. And this is just a tea from Tanzania that they had, and it was also very yummy. So it came back with us. They also had dry milk, so they didn't have regular milk, but they had dry milk, but it was whole milk. So it tasted very different in your coffee than our powdered skim milk.
So I have here a collection of images from our 2 days at the safari and the waterfall, which I pointed out. And just to put it in perspective of how blessed we were, Father Martin had been on a safari in Zimbabwe. And his comparison was that in the first 15 minutes of our safari, he had already seen more animals than he had in his entire one in Zimbabwe. So I got a quick video clip right here, but look at this blip as I play it.
Okay, so
yeah,
it's a water buffalo.
Up close and personal.
I was in that first vehicle with Father Martin, who he likes to talk. He talks. He was talking the whole trip, narrating everything, and he's talking to this bull, the water buffalo, as it's charging him. He's like, "Okay, is he gonna come? Is he gonna hit us? Is he gonna?" And he was sitting in the corner that if the water buffalo would have hit us, it would have hit him. It was just.
We saw went too far. Sorry, we saw not this one, but we saw a couple baby elephants, one that was still nursing.
It was so cool.
Yeah, it was profound. We didn't see lions. But
this was just a very gift of being able to go. But one of the fun things was that it was also a gift to the sisters that went with us. Sister Scholastica had only been on safari 3 times, and each time it was with people from Wisconsin. Our first group last summer, 2 boys went back, and they actually saw lions that day. And then this was her third time. So we also were able to, by them coming with us, they got to see something better, or something that they wouldn't necessarily see. We had fantastic, the picture in the middle here are the people who drove us around. It was just a treat to see them. The bottom picture was where we stayed. It was a diocesan retreat center, and we were able to stay. So we were so blessed. Really, none of us knew where we were going when we left, or but we all expected to see very simple accommodations because we had heard stories about Uganda, and this is what we thought we were going to. And we ended up having very nice accommodations. We had beds, and we had private baths with running water.
And sit-down toilets as opposed to the squatty potty, which is, if you've not been to some countries, it's basically just a porcelain
Turkish
fitting on the floor with a hole.
Yeah.
And so many in our group were very, grateful.
However, by the time we were done with our time in Tanzania, all of us had learned how to squat, because on our bus trip home, you will see us coming out of the outhouse. Ladies on the left, men on the right, and there we go.
Yeah, field of dreams.
Yes. And then this, the bottom left here, not an uncommon sight. The amount and the types of things that were being transported on bicycles was phenomenal as we drove
Balanced.
around. Yes, balanced.
That too, amazing.
One of the things that we had an opportunity, it's time, but we also have had pen pal relationships with some of the sisters from members of our parish, and I actually got to meet my pen pal, and I was able to ask her questions about her village life, because we were in this big city and it was not like a village, so we had lots of questions. I asked her about the bricks. So does somebody make those bricks and then sell them? And she chuckles and says, no, everybody makes their own bricks. When you want, do all of the houses have refrigerators? She chuckles and says, no, we don't know, that's not traditional. Traditionally, we haven't had refrigerators, so why would we don't need one. So she was just like, that traditional Tanzania culture, all of that stuff that is being monitorized or Americanized isn't necessary in a lot of ways. So, and that was one of the keys that I don't want to have America be reflected back on me when I look at Tanzania. I want Tanzania to be reflected back when I look at Tanzania.
Just as at the front end of a mission trip, you need to be preparing. The other thing that I learned from immersion experiences is that you need to come back out slowly. So the one thing we were able to do is to come back out slowly by spending time in Rome. I know that may sound, like, really? But Father Martin wanted to be back for the weekend masses because that was his last weekend before making a change. And most of the rest of the group thought, rather than coming back on a Thursday night, let's spend a weekend in Rome. So that's what we did. And we had as our guide a seminarian from the Diocese of Green Bay, Matthew Coley, who we got connected with by Brandon Gunther, now Father Brandon Gunther, and out of this world to have somebody who lives there, because the first night he took us up onto the roof of the North American College for supper. And we had pizza looking at St. Peter's Square, the sun going down. Tourists don't get that. No, he took us to all the four major basilicas. We went to the Colosseum, all the top places in Rome. But the beauty was that we had time for spontaneous reflection, dialogue, really to ask that question of what did we just experience, not in Rome, but in Africa. And so that was real important to make that, kind of gradual re-entry.
If I can indulge you in a personal story, the picture up here, the portrait in the background is of Sister Frances Streidel, the Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother. Sister Frances Streidel was their founder. Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother founded St. Joseph's Hospital in Marshfield, and I have 3 great aunts that were Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother. One of them was Sister Claire, had been the Mother Superior from 69 to 73. So right during that funny time. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I met a little old nun who remembered Sister Claire? And we walked in, and this little old nun, Sister Grace, was sitting at the guest house. We stayed at a Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother guest house, and she was sitting at the reception desk. I'm like, oh, this might be the one. The next day I had typed into my Google Translator all of the things I wanted to tell her to explain who I was and who Sister, and I got back down to the desk and it wasn't there anymore. So Dan simply wrote Sister Claire on a piece of paper, and she's like, oh, Mother Clara? Yes, I know that. And so it was just really cool that I was actually able to meet somebody who knew my aunt.
Yeah. And then kind of a few words of follow-up. We had accumulated and wired over to the sisters about $12,000 in donations that were earmarked for different things. So here she is in the store, purchased a new organ for their formation house. Solar panels for the school, because as we had talked about the reliability of electricity, they had identified, and Mother Superior is so great. We had sent the money she said they would need for 2. Well, she negotiated for 3. Here are the orphans in their Sunday best, all holding medicines that went to the orphanage. And Christy referenced this earlier, that when we showed these pictures to our people who had physically been there, they said, where is that? Because when they were there, the shelves were basically bare.
There was one thing on that wooden shelf, and there was one bottle of like Ipecac syrup or something like that was on the thing.
And this, I'll just leave it up there, but we kind of came back with the opportunity for people, mainly at St. John's, if they're interested in having an ongoing relationship of kind of adopting, sponsoring, supporting, whatever word you want to use. And this was a young man who is in seminary. His older sister is a professed sister with the Sisters of Our Lady Queen of Africa. And then we were talking, well, what would it be? Well, a million Tanzanian shillings. A million. Well, it's a 2,315 to 1 exchange ratio, so you boil it all down and it's like 500. So, any questions?
And,
Yeah.
is there a presence of fatherhood among the Tanzanian people where we're suffering from the absence of fatherhood here? Is there a presence of fatherhood there?
I can't say from firsthand experience because we weren't in homes, but there did not seem to be the family breakdown there that we have here. You know, the families are much more intact. Here's an observation that I think can speak to it. Is about the 3rd day as we were driving around, an observation that I made which seems maybe silly but was profound, and that observation was, they're all outside. And there's a cultural difference just seeing the interaction, the families being together as family, wherever you are. But when you drive around streets, in fact, it was in La Crosse, driving on Losey Boulevard, and I said, remember Tanzania? Because we didn't see but like 1 or 2 people outside.
In La Crosse.
So, yeah. So I can't speak firsthand definitively, but that is, what I can share. Dunno?
Was there a boys' school there? And then is the girls, do they have families, or do they just stay on campus like all year?
So the mission, the girls' school was started because the sisters believe that if you teach the mother, you influence the family. So they intentionally started a girls' school to educate the mother, to influence families. And these girls are, the girls' school, St. Teresia, is like one of the top schools in Tanzania. They are one of the top 2 in their like ending grades. It would be the ACT or the SAT here, but it's something else there. And so they have people from all over the country wanting to send their girls there, but because of their mission, they look for underprivileged girls to sponsor and scholarship into there. So first, they look up and find as many underprivileged girls as they can to bring in, and then they open up the rest of their spots to people who are able to pay for it. So it's a combination of poor girls and somewhat privileged girls. But, and that's one of the things that fascinated me, was that there is not anything privileged about this space. It is a very simple, very basic. We were there one day for eating, I was telling Father, and they had us all sitting up around in like at a wedding when you're at the front table. And the girls were eating here, and our girls had a real hard time because we were had soda, and we were eating their chicken, and the girls were drinking water and having rice and beans, and had to watch us eat this really great food. But some of those girls have their own bedroom, they have cell phones at home, they have TV, they have refrigerators, but they come to this place for education, and they have none of that. They live in a barracks type room, and they have very strict classroom type things, and in a way give up quite a bit to come to school. And they are looking at starting a boys' school or a co-ed school, because so many moms of boys have asked them to, because their education parents. So one of the places that we went to was land that they had purchased for a boys', it would be a co-ed school, and probably just not a boarding school.
You mentioned that the orphanage is usually up to age 5. What about the school? How old are the girls?
The school is
higher education? Do they go into the workforce? What is that?
The school is a middle to high school, so yeah, it's a middle high school, Form 4 through Form 6. And they are educated to go on to university. We did not ask. I do not know how many of them do go on to university, but it is Form 6 is like the university. That's the form you need to take in order to go to university. Some schools end at Form 5. So they have the ability to do that.